A group of seasoned hikers set out for an expedition, but what rescuers found weeks later defied all explanation. In early February 1959, 9 students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, an even mix of men and women, all experienced Grade 2 skiers, set foot into the frostbitten expanses of the Northern Urals, Soviet Union. Led by Igor Dyatlov, their mission was straightforward: cross a high-altitude pass known as Kholat Syakhl, named ominously Dead Mountain. The weather turned ruthless, and their last communication, an expected telegram, never came. Weeks later, the rescue teams discovered a scene that would haunt investigators for decades. Their tent lay torn open from the inside. Inside, boots, rucksacks, even a plate of pork fat were neatly arranged, yet the occupants had vanished. Outside, 9 sets of footprints led away, barefoot, in socks, or with just a single boot, vanishing into the snowy darkness. Close to a tree line, 2 bodies were found shoeless, clad only in underwear, slumped near a small fire beneath a Siberian pine. It wasn't until weeks later that searchers found the remaining 4, buried under meters of snow in a ravine, 3 of whom were in better dress, as if they'd been trying to stay warm using each other's clothing. The injuries they bore were as mystifying as the scene itself. 6 died of hypothermia. Tragic, yes, but not inexplicable. 3 died from physical trauma so severe it was likened to a car crash. 1 had a crushed skull, 2 had broken ribs and chests, yet they bore no external wounds. Even more disturbing were the visceral injuries. Missing eyes, tongues, eyebrows, part of a face mutilated in ways investigators believed occurred post-mortem, likely as the bodies lay in a creek. To add to the mystery, some of their clothes registered measurable levels of radiation, traces that fueled whispers of military cover-ups and covert testing. So what could have driven 9 experienced mountaineers to slash their way out of a tent and flee into the Arctic night? Over the years, theories multiplied. Some blamed a sudden avalanche, pushing them into the cold, clad in inadequate clothing, fractured by the slide's force. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case and officially cited an avalanche, citing the harsh weather, heavy snowfall, and hurricane-force winds that could have forced the group from their shelter. In 2021, scientists offered a more nuanced theory: a delayed slab avalanche, a compact and deadly snow slab that formed silently, triggered hours after the hikers pitched their tent by weakening the snowpack with their excavation. Katabatic winds may have deposited dense snow overhead, creating a ticking time bomb that eventually collapsed the tent from above, causing internal injuries and panic. Simulations suggest such a slab, though small, could inflict significant trauma, especially against the hard-packed ski floor they'd placed under their tent. Other theories veered from natural to bizarre: secret Soviet parachute mines or weapons tests, UFO encounters, or even psychological mass panic from infrasound generated by winds scraping the mountain's contours. The radiation on their gear fueled speculation about KGB interference or hazardous military tests, though, critics say, radiation would likely have shown up on more than just a few items. In the end, the most accepted explanation today leans on a lethal mix of nature's fury and human misjudgment: a remote camp too exposed, the leader's lack of experience in avalanche terrain, nightfall, fear, and fragmentation into smaller groups, all in a bid to survive that tragically failed. Despite resurfacing data and simulations, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains a haunting combination of horrific reality and elusive truth. No theory fits all the clues. And so, the mountain keeps its secrets, etched forever in cold darkness and the minds of those who ponder it. Where are you watching the video? Comment below, and if you like the video, please subscribe and like the channel. Christmas Eve turned into a nightmare for one West Virginia family, and their questions still burn like the fire that consumed their home. On a frigid Christmas Eve in 1945, the Sodders, George and Jenny, proud parents of 10, settled into their 2-story home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Their youngest, Sylvia, was nestled in bed, while the 5 middle children stayed up late, their excitement over Christmas gifts keeping them awake. Around 10 p.m., Mom tucked those kids in, urging them to do their chores before bed. Marion dozed off on the living room couch. At 12:30 a.m., a wrong number phone call jolted Jenny awake. Her only memory was of strange laughter and clinking glasses. Shortly after, she noticed the curtains weren't drawn and the lights were still on, odd, given how diligent the kids usually were. Moments later, she heard a loud thud on the roof and then, nothing but the scent of smoke. In minutes, their lives turned upside down as fire ripped through their home. The parents and 4 children escaped. The 5 others vanished. No remains were ever found. Attempts to call for help failed, calls to emergency services went unanswered, and a nearby tavern's phone was broken too. A ladder that could have been life-saving was missing. The family's trucks refused to start despite having worked just hours earlier. Meanwhile, flames swallowed the house in only about 45 minutes. When firefighters finally arrived, they found no bodies, only ashes. When death certificates were issued, the official cause was fire or suffocation. But the family couldn't accept it. Jenny tested how bones burn and found they don't vanish completely, even under extreme heat, yet the Sodder children's remains were nowhere to be seen. Suspicious signs piled up. A ladder was later found 75 feet down an embankment. The phone line had been cut, not burned, suggesting sabotage, and windows into the investigation were murky at best. One local had even warned George that his house would go up in smoke because of his outspoken anti-Mussolini views long before the fire. Foul play theories emerged. A bus driver reported seeing people fling balls of fire at the house. A mysterious green rubber object, possibly a hand grenade, was found. Witnesses later claimed the missing children were seen alive. One hotel worker described seeing them checking in with strangers. Another said they served them breakfast the following day. In 1949, a Smithsonian pathologist examined bone fragments found on the fire site. They were from a single adult, not a child, likely introduced with the dirt the Sodder family used to fill in the site. The remains were never convincing evidence of the children's fate. State authorities and the FBI both ultimately dropped the case. West Virginia's governor called the efforts hopeless, shutting down the state investigation. The FBI, citing jurisdiction issues, followed it for 2 years before giving up. But the family never stopped searching. Flyers, billboards, private investigators, tips from across the country. George and Jenny chased every hope. In one heart-wrenching moment, they received a photo of a young man who resembled their son Louis, with a message that read simply, "I love Brother Frankie." Conveyed anonymously, it ignited the family's hope anew. Their youngest daughter, Sylvia, just 2 when the fire happened, grew up with this lingering question and vowed never to let the story fade. She continued the search into the 21st century, only passing away in 2021. To this day, no theory fits perfectly. Was it a tragic accident, a sinister abduction, mafia retribution, or a cruel combination of forces? The Sodder children remain a mystery that refuses resolution. Imagine rain falling from the sky, not water, but translucent jelly-like blobs. In August 1994, Oakville, a quiet rural town in Washington state, awoke to something straight out of a dream. Residents discovered tiny, translucent blobs, each roughly half the size of a grain of rice, clinging to cars, rooftops, and fields. The gelatinous drops fell repeatedly over the next 3 weeks, covering around 20 square miles in this unearthly residue. At first, the bizarre substance prompted astonishment, but then illness followed. Officer David Lacey, on patrol during the early morning hours of the initial event, described how his windshield wipers smeared the goo so heavily he could barely see. Within hours, he was violently ill. Another resident, Dottie Hearn, was hospitalized with dizziness and nausea. Several other townsfolk reported flu-like symptoms immediately after contact. Even animals weren't spared. Some died or displayed alarming signs of distress. Desperate for answers, locals collected samples. In a hospital lab, technicians initially claimed to find human white blood cells. But further testing by the Department of Ecology shattered that notion. No nuclei were present, which human cells require. A different analysis by the Department of Health identified 2 bacteria, Pseudomonas fluorescens and Enterobacter cloacae. Both are known to exist in nature and sometimes in the human digestive tract, though not conclusively linked to the illnesses reported. Theories flooded in, none satisfactory. Some suggested bizarre military interference. Perhaps jellyfish remains bombed into the atmosphere by nearby training or even biological agent testing. But authorities confirmed no such activity, nor did jellyfish fragments hold up under scrutiny, especially since they contain nucleated cells, unlike the blob samples. Others theorized the substance was a form of star jelly, a gelatinous material reported in folklore for centuries, sometimes linked to frog spawn, cyanobacteria, slime molds, or even oviduct tissues of amphibians, dispersed by birds or moisture. While that offers a plausible natural origin, it fails to fully explain the simultaneous illness or the sudden, repeated rain-like appearances. Even stranger, All samples disappeared before further analysis could be done. With no physical evidence left, the mystery deepened. Nearly 3 decades later, in 2025, similar gelatinous blob rain was reported in nearby Rochester, without associated illnesses, reigniting public fascination. But still, nobody knows what Oakville's sky really delivered. A lighthouse meant to guide ships became the scene of one of history's most enduring vanishings. On a harsh December morning in 1900, a relief ship approached the remote Flannan Isles off Scotland's Outer Hebrides, only to find the lighthouse dark and silent. No flag flew, no shore provisions awaited the relief team, and alarmingly, no keeper stood to greet them. The lighthouse tender's captain sent up flares and sounded his horn. Still, no response. When relief keeper Joseph Moore finally made it ashore, what he found inside was chilling. Unmanned, with lamps cleaned and topped up, kitchen tidy, beds unmade, and even a set of oilskins missing. Yet the 3 men assigned to that lighthouse were nowhere to be found. No sign of struggle, no trace of them on the island. An official investigation led by Robert Muirhead, a Northern Lighthouse Board superintendent who personally knew the men, drew on the physical clues around the island. The west landing showed clear signs of brutal weather. Iron railings bent, railway tracks ripped from concrete, a massive boulder shifted down toward the light, and turf ripped away from high cliff edges. His conclusion: the keepers likely went down to secure gear during a storm and were swept away by an enormous wave, typical of what locals call a rogue wave, and tragically lost to the sea. Yet the eerie aftermath fueled myth and speculation. Ballads, rumors of praying men, logbooks ominously predicting doom, all later debunked or revealed as fictional embellishments. One popular version told of cryptic final log entries: severe winds the likes of which I have never seen, the men praying, or God is over all. But historians have found no evidence of these entries in the original records. Over a century later, the lighthouse stands, its keepers vanished, a haunting silhouette against the Atlantic sky, as much legend as fact. Was it a singular tragic accident, misfortune during a deadly storm, or something more inexplicable? The truth remains as inaccessible as the cold ocean below. In a remote farmhouse, a family slaughtered, by someone who may have lived among them. On the night of March 31, 1922, at the isolated Hinterkaifeck farmstead in Bavaria, Germany, 6 inhabitants were brutally killed. The victims were patriarch Andreas Gruber, his wife Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, her 2 young children, 7-year-old Kazilia and toddler Joseph, and their maid, Maria Baumgartner, who had arrived just hours earlier. In the quiet lead-up to the massacre, Andreas noticed odd signs: footprints in the snow leading to the farm, but none leading away, suggesting someone was watching or lurking nearby. He also reported hearing unexplained noises in the attic and finding a strange newspaper not delivered in the area. For a family living in such a secluded place, these were troubling signs. When neighbors discovered the crime on April 4th, days after it happened, the scene was chilling. 4 bodies lay in the barn, pummeled with a mattock, a heavy farming tool later recovered hidden in the attic. Inside the house, the maid and young Joseph were found slain in their separate rooms. Evidence suggested the youngest child may have survived for hours after the attack, even tearing out clumps of her own hair in agony before she died. What made the discovery even more horrifying was that someone seemed to have remained on the farm after the murders. Animals were fed, meals prepared, and smoke rose from the chimney in the days following the killings, even though the family was gone. A calendar on the wall had its March 31st page torn away, as if marking the moment of death. Investigators scoured the area for suspects. A neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, rumored to be Victoria's lover and possibly Joseph's father, came under heavy suspicion. Local workers and drifters were interrogated, rumors spread, but no one was ever convicted. The investigation stretched on for decades, into the 1950s, but remained unsolved. Speculation over the years has been endless. Was it a vengeful neighbor? A jealous lover seeking retribution? A wandering killer passing through? Or something darker still, violence from within the family itself? Andreas and Victoria had once been convicted of an incestuous relationship, and some believed Joseph might have been Andreas's child. Others whispered about a mysterious stranger who reportedly claimed responsibility before disappearing into the woods. In time, the farmhouse itself was torn down, the victims' skulls lost during the Second World War, and official records destroyed. Today, the land is quiet farmland. Only a memorial marks the spot where 6 lives ended violently, and where the truth of what happened on that remote Bavarian night continues to elude us. Where are you watching the video? Comment below, and if you like the video, please subscribe and like the channel. A man with no name, no identity, and only one cryptic clue. On December 1, 1948, early morning light revealed a man lying lifeless against a seawall on Somerton Beach near Adelaide. He wore a suit, bore no identification, and gave no clue as to who he was, or why he died there. A half-smoked cigarette rested on his shoulder. Among his few personal effects were a rail ticket, bus ticket, chewing gum, matches, and a comb, everyday items framing an extraordinary mystery. An autopsy followed. The man's heart looked normal, but his organs bore evidence of serious distress, congestion, hemorrhage, and stomach damage. The pathologist suspected poisoning, possibly a hypnotic or cardiac glycoside. Still, with no detectable toxin, no signs of vomiting, and absence of convulsions, the cause remained ambiguous. It was far from a natural death. Weeks later, a scrap of paper tucked in a hidden pocket was found, bearing the words, "Tamam shud," Persian for, "it is finished." Investigators traced it to the last page of a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. That same book yielded an unlisted phone number and a series of cryptic letters resembling a coded message. Despite decades of speculation and expert scrutiny, the code has never been deciphered. Clothing labels were gone, unless perhaps someone deliberately removed them, and tags with names like Keen still lingered, raising more questions than answers. A suitcase linked to the man contained neatly folded personal items, suggesting careful preparation despite the personal erasure. A local nurse lived close by, the number from the book traced to her. When shown a plaster cast of the man's face, she declined to identify him, adding another layer of enigma. Some believed she knew him, others suspected her of keeping silent out of fear or shame. Over the decades, theories proliferated. Was he a Cold War spy, a heartbroken lover, or a man scheming his own anonymous suicide? Even more thrilling, in 2022, researchers announced that modern genetic genealogy may have identified him as Carl Charles Webb, a Melbourne engineer, with tentative connections through distant relatives' DNA and facial resemblance. Authorities have declined to confirm this conclusively. For years, authorities refused to exhume the body out of respect. But advancements in DNA extraction prompted a change. The body was finally exhumed in 2021. Scientists hope this will bring real closure. Can two young girls carry memories from lives they never lived? In 1957, tragedy struck the Pollock family in Hexham, England. Sisters Joanna, 11, and Jacqueline, 6, were killed in a car accident. Grief overwhelmed their parents, John and Florence, until a surprising gift arrived a year later. In October 1958, Florence gave birth to identical twin girls, Gillian and Jennifer. Almost immediately, the new girls displayed behaviors no one could explain. Jennifer, for instance, had two significant physical markers: a birthmark on her waist that exactly matched one of Jacqueline's, and a mark on her forehead resembling a scar Jacqueline once had. Both marks appeared to deepen in color in cold weather, striking anomalies given the identical twins should have been mirror images of each other. As Gillian and Jennifer grew, they did something even more unsettling. Around the age of 2, they began requesting toys that Joanne and Jacqueline used to play with, items nobody in the house had mentioned or shown them. The details were unervingly precise. Gillian called a teddy, Teddy, the name its original owner had used, and Jennifer requested a rabbit named Tommy. It was as though they were reclaiming childhood belongings from a life they never lived. The mysteries didn't stop with physical items. The twins described events, took routes, and recognized places in Hexham, like the old school playground and a hidden park, that they had never been to. On a return visit, they navigated towards a school and playground behind a wall, with no prior knowledge, pointing confidently as if this was their domain. The twins' behavior echoed that of their deceased sisters in personality too. Gillian played mother to Jennifer, just as Joanna had to Jacqueline. Their phobias even aligned. Both twins would instinctively hold hands when a car engine started, as though still haunted by the trauma of their sister's fatal accident. When the twins turned 5, these memories and behaviors gradually faded into ordinary childhood. By then, they had lost any conscious connection to the past lives they had seemingly recalled. The case attracted serious scholarly attention. Psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson, renowned for his research on reincarnation, studied the twins. He considered their birthmarks, early behavior, and memories to be highly compelling, even if his conclusions stopped short of claiming definitive proof. He categorized the case as one of the best examples of possible reincarnation phenomena. Critics, however, proposed more mundane explanations. Some suggested the twins could have been subconsciously influenced by stories shared at home or by their older siblings. Others pointed to the possibility of parental bias or embellishment, with details unintentionally reinforced over time. Cultural fascination with reincarnation may have shaped interpretations more than the evidence itself. Still, the Pollock twins remain one of the most remarkable and controversial cases in reincarnation discussions. An eerie blend of birthmarks, remembered places, uncanny knowledge, and fading recollections, leaving us to wonder, were these twins living proof of life after death? A plane vanishes into thin air, and the world is left searching. On the night of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing, carrying 239 souls. Less than an hour later, the aircraft inexplicably veered off its planned route. Transponders went silent, and the plane slipped off radar just as it entered Vietnamese airspace. It would reappear only in fragments, satellite pings revealing it had turned, skirting over the Malay Peninsula, then disappearing over the Andaman Sea. Hours later, an ominous pattern emerged. The plane drifted south into an uncharted expanse of the Indian Ocean, where it eventually ran out of fuel and vanished without a trace. It was a chilling conclusion, reached largely through the silent testimony of cryptic satellite signals. The hunt that followed became the most expensive search in aviation history. Ships, aircraft, underwater drones, scouring 120,000 square kilometers of relentless ocean from Southeast Asia to the deep southern Indian Ocean. Yet, the vast underwater world swallowed MH370 whole. No wreckage, no bodies, no black boxes ever recovered. Then, in 2015, a breakthrough. A wing fragment washed ashore on Réunion Island. It was the first confirmed wreckage, followed by other debris found along the shores of Africa and Indian Ocean islands. These fragments offered proof of disaster, but no fresh path to the heart of the mystery. Theories surfaced faster than solutions. Hijacking, catastrophic failure, pilot suicide, a high-altitude hypoxia event, radical mechanical sabotage, none confirmed, all contentious. Investigations in 2018 allowed for unlawful interference, but found no definitive culprit. New safety protocols for real-time aircraft tracking were introduced globally, but only for new jets, leaving older fleets still vulnerable. As of early 2025, hope persists. A renewed search is underway, led by a private marine robotics firm using advanced autonomous underwater vehicles to probe deep ocean hotspots. Yet, if MH370 remains unfound, its vanishing act may stand as one of the greatest enigmas of the modern era. 239 souls vanished into the night sky, and the ocean has kept their secret.